Hi everybody, Chris Titley here and welcome to Scoreboard.
This episode is powered by Swyftx, Australia's top-rated crypto exchange and proudly homegrown. Just like many of the athletes and business leaders we feature on Scoreboard.
Hi, it's Chris Titley here and on today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast, I'm joined by Ted Richards. Ted, thank you so much for being part of the series.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Ted, where are we joining you from today?
I'm in Melbourne at the Wilson's Advisory Office, corner of Flinders and Exhibition in Melbourne CBD.
The blue sky at the back looks all right.
Yeah, I assume you're in Sydney?
No, Brisbane, mate.
Oh, you're Brisbane. Oh, I don't know why I thought Sydney, but
oh, that's okay. I get that all the time. I'm happy with that, though. You know.
Well, I know Sydney's coming off like their third week of rain straight, so that's why I thought you were.
I've got the jumper on. My own jumper on gives it away a little bit. I'm from Queensland, but anyway, all good, mates. And sitting here on the Thursday, the 14th of August. How's your Thursday been? How's your week been?
Yeah, good. I actually was on a holiday just only a few weeks ago. Took the family to Bali, so very much energised. Come back from that, so it's one of the good holidays in Bali where no one got sick. So come back in, as opposed to I think everyone's got a story of where at some stage someone, either themselves or someone else they've been on holiday with, has had some Bali belly. But sure, fortunately, avoided that.
Yeah, mate. And what did you get up to the holiday? Did you switch off from the day-to-day grind?
Yes. So I was able to switch off. I've got a business partner that I work closely with. It was picked up all the emails and communications with clients, and it was good to be able to switch off. And I've got 3 young kids. Spend time in the pool, water slides, cocktails, a lot of fun. Yeah, it was
awesome,
good.
Mate. And you mentioned you're at Wilson's Advisory. Most people who don't know Ted Richards, the person, would consider them Ted Richards, the footballer, right? But what are you doing now? Tell us about your life now after football.
Yes, so I retired from footy close to 10 years ago now, and I joined a startup which was called Six Park. I did that, and we built a robo-advisor, which was providing online investment advice to people at the other end of the industry to what I'm working in right now, and that's people often starting off on their investment journey. Proud to say that business was recently sold to NAB, and they're going to roll that out, I think, early next year, a NAB branded version of that, in that they've recognised the opportunity to provide a low cost investment offering for their clients, which is great. But what I do right now is I'm working with high net worth families and family offices and for-purpose organisations, providing sophisticated investment and financial advice. And Chris, I'm as much as I love my time in footy, I'm very lucky to say I love what I'm doing right now. So I get to work with clients and help them achieve their goals and objectives, and I love what I do. I'm very lucky.
Just touching on that in terms of your relationship with footy, do you want to talk about that and how that's changed over time?
Yeah, sure. So, Chris, I grew up in Melbourne. A boy in Melbourne. A fair chance I'm going to have a team and love my footy, and that's very much my upbringing. I was passionate for footy, big Essendon fan, and my journey with footy is and always has been of one of just I do love the game. Fortunate enough to get drafted to the team that I went for, which is a dream come true.
Rare. Yeah, apart from
it is very rare. But if a story that I'll share is, I actually think it was more of a curse than a blessing, in that I got drafted when I was 17 and I just finished year 12. And came into Essendon just after they'd won a premiership. Now, instead of having the mindset, I don't care who you are, guys, and what you did last year, I'm here to take your spot. That's the mindset I should have had. As a 17-year-old, a boy that had just grown up idolising a lot of these people now in the locker room that I was with, I just wanted to be their mates. And in a competitive, ruthless industry, that's the wrong approach. Took me a couple of years to get my head around the fact that I don't care who you are, James Hird, Matthew Lloyd, Scott Lucas, I'm going to take your spot. But so there were some ups and downs at Essendon. I'm not sure how much you want to go into details, but fast forward to where I am now, no longer a professional footballer. I'm just a fan. I love the game. I'll take my kids to games. I coach my son's under 10s team, and very much like my footy, but at the same time, my world doesn't revolve around it anymore.
Yeah, no, awesome. That's a good way to describe it. And taking your kids and loving the game, I think it's a good, healthy thing that from a past player to do that and to continue to be a fan. Who's your team now?
So I played for two teams, Essendon, 5 years at Essendon and 11 at the Swans.
Yep.
I have moved across to the Swans for many reasons. One is I had 11 years there, but secondly, I did achieve a lot of success at the Swans in that we played in 3 grand finals and I won one of those. I've got mates for life from that. I've got mates for life from both teams, but the Swans are my team, and it also Essendon's down the bottom of the ladder, so it's hard to go back to them when they're down the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah, well, you got to be a fan all the way through. And your kids are Swans fans, then, I take it?
Yeah, they're Swans fans. My wife did her best for a while to see if she could navigate them to the team that she grew up following, and that's the Melbourne Demons, but shut that down pretty quickly.
A lot of talent in the Swans. Actually caught up with Hayden McLean after the game. I was on the podcast recently after the Gabba game, which was a good win for the Swans. Not so good for our team, the Lions, and the kids weren't so happy, but they were happy meeting Hayden and Nick Blakey as well, the Lizard. They're going to some big talent there, but not this year.
Yeah, well, gee, you got access to some of the big dogs in the team. Both of those guys, early 20s, I think. So the future's looking bright for the Swans if they can continue to retain those players. Hopefully, what we're seeing this year is it's just a down year, and we'll be back next year. But
last year as well.
My kids, they love Isaac Heaney, they love Tom Papley, and I feel like a pretty cool dad if I can give them access to those kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, just on that 17-year-old, quote unquote fanboy when you were playing, a little bit of, I think you mentioned in previous sort of podcast, the hard edge, or as I call it, inner mongrel. When did that sort of come about? Like later on, was it the move to Sydney, or was it during that Essendon time where you're like, I don't care who you are, I'm going to beat you and I'm going to take your spot?
Yeah, I think it's more of an evolution than a key moment. Although there is, when you're on 1 year deals, a 1 year contract can certainly shorten your perspective in terms of what you've got to achieve over the next month or two. So I think it was a bit of maturity, a bit of experience, and a bit of seeing others fail and learning from that. Because, as a 17 or 18-year-old coming into a new footy team, often, getting a nice little salary, some players go down the path of going, oh, how good's this? Let's go and, party on the weekends, and they're not making the sacrifices. And before they know it, they're out of the system and they're done. Saw a lot of those people, and it was certainly, well, no, I really do want to make a career of this, and I'm going to take your spot.
And in terms of positions, you changed around a little bit from the start of your career to where you were. How did that come about, and refining your trade, I suppose, and doubling down on your skill set? When did that all come about, and was there some influence there? Yeah,
you're right, Chris. So it's actually quite rare for defenders to get drafted. Normally, if you are the best player in a team, you're either going to be played up forward or in the midfield. So it is relatively common for a tall forward to get drafted as a forward and then get developed into a backman, and that's kind of what happened with me. So I got drafted to Essendon, arguably the greatest team of all time for what they achieved in 2000, and that I think they only lost one game. That was by a point. Just to expand on that a bit more, they really should have created the dynasty. To be fair, I think that team did underachieve for what they could have. And I just couldn't crack my way into that forward line with some of the likes of Matthew Lloyd, James Hird, and Scott Lucas. So I played my best football down back, and that's where my career took off.
How did you go with feedback at a young age? Were you one of those types of people that went, no, I'm in the team, mate. I'm pretty good. Or did you listen? Were you patient? And in terms of being hard on yourself, how did you go with that?
Yeah, well, once again, I think that's a life skill that in how to handle feedback that took some time. I think I was pretty good, but when you're getting feedback every week, which a high competitive environment, high performance environment like AFL provides, it's very easy to get super hard and too hard on yourself. I think it was probably at the Swans where I started to develop that skill in giving feedback, in having a level of perspective on the feedback. And what I mean by perspective is if someone gives you room for improvements, negatives, feedback, that type of feedback, you can really frame that as, someone's completely on top of me. He's one more thing that I'm making a mistake, or you can shift and frame that as like a gift. And here is an opportunity that I can use to get to the next level. So I did really try and reframe a lot of the feedback that was given me as more of a gift than a burden, and that's helped. And to be honest, Chris, that's a life skill that I still apply to these days. We're all still getting your feedback, whether it's from my wife, my kids, or whoever. I do try my best to think of it as a gift rather than a burden.
Yeah, it's a great point. And in a previous podcast, there was the CEO of the Jack Jumpers, Christine Finnegan, who said to me that feedback is a gift. And it was sort of like, that's an interesting way of looking at it and changing your mindset around from someone like, hey, Chris, you asked too many questions or something. I'll be like, no, I don't. You'll be like, oh, actually, maybe I do. Thank you for that. Thank you for caring, I suppose. And thank you for sort of participating. But then also there's the flip side, which I've seen some athletes recently getting like horrible feedback from direct messages on social media about losing a bet or something, I think that's a big issue. Probably something that was around in your days in terms of feedback, probably verbal more than social media. But how did you deal with the downtimes or the bad game where maybe you got booed or maybe you dropped a mark and people went, ugh?
Yeah. I think that's part of pressure that comes with being a professional athlete. And I had my ups and downs in trying to, as a 17, 18-year-old and trying to navigate how I would handle that pressure. There is a line that I remember that really did help me frame and maybe reposition some of that pressure. And often these life skills or lessons that would come to me over the course of my footy career came from other sports or other industries. Anyway, the example that I want to share is I was watching the Australian Open final, 20 years ago. Maria Sharapova won it that year. And in her thank you speech, she called out Billie Jean King. And she said, the night before, last night before we played, Billie Jean King sent me a text and it said, pressure is a privilege, champions take chances. And
thinking about that, pretty good, isn't it?
It struck a chord with me because I was like, here I was thinking, from time to time, thinking about pressure as a burden. But if you reframe it, that it's a privilege, I play in the backline. My job is to shut down most weeks some of the opposition's best forwards. Yeah, that comes with pressure, but it's also a privilege. I'm the one that is given that responsibility. And I used to really reposition my thinking around that as, how good's this? I'm the one that's trusted with this opportunity. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna do it for the team.
I'm going to touch on your grand finals there for a second in terms of pressure and nerves and visualization, I suppose. How would you describe your grand final experiences per se compared to other games?
Yeah, so I played in 3 grand finals and 3 different experiences. 2006 was my first one. we lost by a point. I was 22. I was very much, I was not the star of the team or anything like that, but I was really proud of myself with the effort that I put in for the team. But I did struggle with the fact that of losing by so close, and I had to kind of make sense. Is this the only opportunity that I'll ever play in a grand final? And we lost by a point. So it took me a couple of years. So I did think, well, if that's all I ever get, that's so be it. And but the reality is, I got two more opportunities. One was in 2012, and I might provide a bit more of expand on 2012 for a bit, because in the week before, I was running back to try and take a mark, and I got an elbow in the back of the head from which knocked me out in midair. And as I fell, obviously I was knocked out. I fell on a weird angle, so I stuffed up the syndesmosis at the bottom of my ankle. Now, fortunately, the concussion wasn't too bad, but the reality is the damage to the syndesmosis was very bad. Normally, I'd probably have at least 6 or 7 weeks out, but at that stage, I was a very important player for the team, and we were playing Hawthorn in the grand final. My opponent would be Buddy Franklin, arguably the most athletic player that's ever played the game in the history of the game, 6'7" and lightning quick. And I was nervous if I'd be selfish to be able to say, pick me, knowing that I'm going to be running around on one leg. But the medical team gave me confidence that they could get me through the game. We had a plan which I thought was borderline crazy, but they said it can work. But the only thing is, we couldn't test it out in the week. So because the damage to the syndesmosis is at the bottom of your leg, the tibia and fibia, holds the tibia and fibia joints together just near your ankle, and so my ankle was just huge. So pretty much every day for the 5 days after the preliminary final and the grand final, they would drain my ankle almost every day, draw out blood from around that area, put it through a centrifuge, punch in white blood cells into the area to help it heal, or to try and do 7 weeks of healing in 4 or 5 days, and then put in cortisone to help fast track the healing too. After 5 days of doing that and the 3 injections every day, so let's call it 15 injections later, the ankle's still no good, but they've said, we'll give you pain relief to get you through the game. And I said, well, how long does a local anaesthetic last? And they said, well, it'll last about 20 minutes. And Chris, you might be aware that a quarter goes for 25, 30 minutes. So I said, well, what are we going to do after the 20 minutes? And they said, well, it'll be quarter time. Just run down. We'll take off your tape and we'll do it again. And then at half time, we'll take off the tape, we'll do it again. At 3/4 time, we'll take off the tape and do it again. We'll get you through this game. And after the injection each time, just wrap my ankle up in tape to lock it up. So the game started, and I can remember, Chris, a bit, I'm running around and I've got this numb, I would say a numb leg, but certainly a numb ankle. And there was a bit where I was running out of the backline and someone looked at me to give me a hand pass. And I can remember thinking, don't hand pass it to me, even though I was out clear. And they hand passed it to me. And the story, I was out by myself, and I can remember thinking, I've got no idea where my leg is. Like, it's numb. I've got no idea. So I had to kick the ball, and I'm kind of in the middle. And I swing my leg through, and I just hope that I'm going to make contact with the ball. And anyway, it just hits the edge of the ball, even though I was by myself. So the ball comes off my foot at right angles, and I get called for a deliberate out of bounds. by the umpire. And I think I ran over and said, mate, I've got no idea where my foot is. I've got
in your head, that's the biggest irony.
I know. So
Mate, no. I'm the opposite. I didn't know where my legs are.
Yeah, anyway, so I thought I'd share that just because it does provide, you asked about what it's like playing in the grand finals. That's how I started. I won't say I dominated that game, but I think I played my role in that, kept Buddy to 3 goals. And he is a superstar champion of the game. And fortunately, we won the game by a kick.
Yeah.
So it was good to get one back. It's a highlight of my life. And the third grand final, Chris, we won't spend too much time on because I think we lost it by about 10 or 15 goals.
Yeah, it's been a bit like that recently in terms of the grand finals. I suppose there's either like the 23 was within 4 points to Brisbane Collingwood, and then a blowout last year, blowout year before, so it's kind of, it's fascinating. I'm curious about the lead up, I suppose, and the distractions, like the parade and, embracing it, but also at the same time going, come, whatever it is, 2:30 or 3 o'clock on that day, it's game on and it's war. But also, you're here, you've given it your best, and you're going to give it your best, and it's sort of let's see what happens, right?
Yeah, it's very easy to say, and this is often said. Players need to come down here and enjoy the week, because when I say down here, it's just because we're based up in Sydney. It's very easy to say. As a 22-year-old, my first grand final. I didn't want to think about it too much because the more I thought about it, the what ifs start to creep in. So I'm not sure I could honestly say I enjoyed the week in my first grand final, but with a bit of maturity and experience, I think I did enjoy the week of the next two. As I know you asked about the week where there's a parade down here, there's all these things, but I can remember when we ran out in my first grand final, I didn't want to kind of just look up into the stand, into the crowd and see, 100,000 people and kind of acknowledge grand final day. Like I was trying my best just to pretend it's just another game. Whereas, I don't know, can you really pretend it's just another game?
Look at Sam Constance, the Boxing Day test, like just the fear that he had in cricket as well, like going, oh, it's 100,000 people, but that's all right, just play play a natural game, and you're like, dude, it's the Boxing Day test.
Yeah. So I think some are better at that than others. Maybe when you're younger, some people can handle that better than others.
I get what you're saying in terms of like you're young enough to go, look, it's there. I know it's the grand final, but I want to win the grand final. Like, I don't care about the cheer and the parades and everything like that. Let's play some footy. But then people look back and go, mate, how was the experience? You're like, well, we lost, so no good. But then you obviously got one back. And as a premiership player, now it's something which I want to touch on a little bit, is the nothing, firstly, no one can take it away from you. B, you're a premiership player. C, you reach the pinnacle in your game in AFL. There's probably not much more apart from multi-premiership player and Brownlows and medals and things like that. But as a footy player, the dream is to win a premiership. Does it get better with age?
Yeah, it does. So in my time at Essendon, Kevin Sheedy was the coach there, and Sheeds and I butt heads from time to time. But there is something that I always remember him saying is the best part of premierships are the reunions. We won our premiership, was it 13 years ago? We've got a WhatsApp group. The banter that revolves around there is like we're still all 22, in the locker room together, even though, many of us are in our 40s now. So I think it does get better with age, and it's also something that I can share with my kids. When it is grand final week, I can sit there and, I don't know, tell them, share some stories about what it was like before they were born, about something that their dad did. And, I'm not here telling them stories about all these things, but it is something that I am very proud of.
As you should be, mate. And then towards the end of the career, the investing side, the market side of things, was that always in the back of your head in terms of footy's not going to last forever?
to be honest, often it was in the front of my head. What motivated me throughout my career, and I think this is normally pretty similar with many athletes, is fear of failure. So I was never confident that I'd have the long career that I did over 16 years. So I always wanted to put things in place. So if I ever did get a tap on the shoulder, say that I was delisted, that I had something. So as much as I'm proud of some of the footy achievements that I received, I'm equally as proud of the fact that I studied for 15 years straight whilst playing. Oh, actually, in that 15 years, I did take one semester off, but did a Bachelor of Commerce, did a Masters of Applied Finance, and worked under a fund manager for the last 6 years of my career. So there were 6 years there. Sorry, 5 years. There was 5 where I was both a full-time footballer. On my day off, I'd work under a fund manager studying stocks. And at nights throughout the week, I'd be chipping off subjects in my masters. So this was not in the back of my mind. It was very much at the forefront of my mind. I didn't have a Buddy Franklin contract where I was like a 10 million over 9 years. Chris, sometimes I got 1 year deals, and I was like, well, I better play well, otherwise it'll be a career change. So so that's very much how I applied myself, and part of the reason why I do think I've been able to transition from one career, football, into finance, investing, private wealth, which I'm doing right now, and partly why I love what I do.
That's awesome. High performance. There's high performance in business. There's high performance in sport. The crossover for what you do from sport to business is interesting, and you've already talked about some of the traits, the life skills and the life traits that you learnt so quickly in footy. But I'm curious to know some of the family offices and some of the entrepreneurs and financial successful people that you deal with. What traits you see in them that you probably see in sport, or is it different?
Nah, Chris, you're exactly right. So I was fortunate to go to a presentation that Cooper Investors and Straight Bat put on yesterday, and that was John Bertrand, the captain, who helped Australia achieve the America's Cup back in 1983, and phenomenal for what he was able to do there for the dominance that America had over that competition. But to kind of quickly summarise the ingredients there is having this goal, this focused mindset, and being unwavering through the process of going after that, and a real discipline around that. Well, they're the life skills that I used to achieve in my football career, and they're exactly the same traits of life skills that I see with successful people in completely different industries. So just to kind of summarise, a real discipline, a level of resilience because the road isn't smooth, and the other trait which I just see everywhere is this competitiveness. I much to my wife's frustration, I am an incredibly competitive person. It helped me have the career that I did with football, and I get incredibly competitive with what I'm doing right now, whether it's returns or quality of service or, and working with clients. But Chris, there is a flip side to that coin, which frustrates my wife, and that is I get competitive about things that I shouldn't get competitive with.
There you go.
So, and the area that I frustrates my wife the most is inside an airport, particularly when there's multiple queues. Mm-hmm. If I pick the wrong queue, I am furious with myself that I lost.
So, so drive-ins?
Drive-ins?
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
So maybe you're taking your kids through Macca's, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah.
And you're like, geez, there's 2 cars there and 1 car there.
Yes.
What do I do? And you get
I
and you get stuck because they take a
yes.
7-piece order.
Yeah. I'm doing the calculations, and I'm furious if I'll lose. I will frame that as I lost. Now, Chris, don't get me wrong. That's what made me a good footballer. Because if I wasn't happy with my game on the weekend, I would push myself so hard throughout the week to be better, to solve those problems. So, and yeah, unfortunately, for some footballers, that inability to switch that off from time to time is where I think mental health can be tested, and poor mental health can come in because of this constant fear of this constant never good enough, this constant need to improve. They can't shut that off, and they might turn to illicit substances. They might turn to gambling. So, whilst it can be a strength, I think I am aware that can be a negative too.
Just touching on that, it's an interesting topic, but sports people are getting paid more than they used to get paid. The broadcast rights are bigger, the Instagram following's bigger, etc. The lifestyle creeps bigger. Is there a problem? Have you seen some problems where people are making really good money and then all of a sudden they're not, and there's like a what do I do now?
I think that's a story that's probably gone on with humans. It's how we've evolved. That's not limited to the last.
But is there better in terms of the solution then?
No, I don't. I'd love to say yes, but there'll always be someone that puts an emphasis on instant gratification over delaying it. There'll always be others that, how our brains have evolved is to chase the next sugar hit. But I'm hoping that whether it's a professional athlete or it's a high net worth or a family office, whatever it is, there can be some guardrails in place to ensure that people are putting aside money, they're not taking on too much risk, they're aware that they have some guardrails in place just to ensure that their wealth can endure.
Education as well, I would have thought.
Yeah, exactly. So, part of what I speak about with clients is the rational side investing. Chris, at the time of recording, it's reporting season in the US and Australia, and there's a lot of what's going on with price to earnings valuations, what's going on with forecasts and expectations. But that's only part of it. A lot of the time, it's the behavioural side. How do people act when they do come into money? How can they avoid that lifestyle creep decision?
I'm curious on two things there. Firstly, I'm going to go back to the competitive thing. Just on the competitiveness versus winning, the competitiveness versus your skill set and your performance versus the team, how does that balance? Like, you can be competitive. Is it competitive just for winning, or is it competitive against yourself to be a better person and then see what happens at the result, the scoreboard?
Yeah. There's so many things that will be competitive in the athlete of a mind. The athlete of a mind, the mind of an athlete. Yep. That will be everything from, am I getting selected or not? And a competition around selection. There will also be competitiveness and around beating your opponent that weekend, and whether you did, and also whether you did or you didn't the week before. Pressure to win as a team, pressure to make finals, and then the big one, which people don't speak about as much, is pressure to get another contract. So some of these pressures and competitive things bounce around people's minds are a team dilemma, and some are an individual. That's just part of playing team sport, is marrying up these two goals of what's good for the team and what's good for the individual, and trying to align both of those to that an individual can can assist and help the team.
And the other question on the back of that is in regards to the feedback that you got week to week. It was the win-loss, you played well, you didn't play well, etc. Watching the video, watching the stats, constantly through your career as a footy player. But, talk about equities and long-term investing. It's not week to week. Like, you're going to have a week where the market's pretty flat. You're going to have years where it's flat or it creeps up or it creeps down, etc. And then you're going to have this bang up or bang down where you're like, well, now I'm into play. How do you deal with that? Like, the change of lifestyle in terms of week by week by week by week to now going 3, 5 year, 10-year view in the market?
Yeah, Chris, you're exactly right. Just to expand on a sporting analogy, if a team down the bottom of the ladder beats a team at the top of the ladder, a lot of what they've done over the prior 6 months of the season is forgotten about. They're put on a pedestal and you're exactly right, Chris. What I'm speaking about with clients is harnessing the power of compound returns. And you don't harness that power over week to week. It's multi-decades. So there is a bit of a shift. Ultimately, this comes back to a life skill that I learned is process. What does my process look like day to day and week to week? And what am I working towards? With football, you're trying to balance up having a process that works towards, making you a better footballer, preparing you for the weekend. You don't want to have a process that is completely focused solely on on 1 week. So, how I'm thinking about my role in this career is very much on a process and the relationships that I build and the quality of offering that I provide clients over the long term rather than any transactional short-term approach.
And do you feel that you probably got to steady ahead when there's some macro events or something, maybe the Trump tariff or even the COVID bang, etc. in the markets where you're like, I felt that I've been at the MCG at the grand final. I'm under pressure. I know this is where I stand up.
Yeah. So, expand on the sporting analogy. There'll be times when the opposition gets momentum and they might kick multiple goals in a row. But if you're still playing well, you reposition and go, oh, they've got momentum, but we stay focused in on what makes us a good footballer, a good team. And equally with markets, there'll be times when there's volatility, a correction, or God forbid, a crash. But the reality is that happens. In the conversations, I'm normally stripping that back to the goals and objectives. And more often than not, the strategy that we've put in place, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, many years ago, however long, the strategy is still on track for them to achieve their goals and objectives, whether that's a very lucky retirement at the age of 65 or being able to transfer wealth over to their children, whether it's related to bank of mum and dad or it's their mortgage paid off. There's all different goals and objectives, and they're what I try and strip those back to, rather than to say CBA was down 10% yesterday, and we're not sure what it's going to do today. Like that's just a bit of noise.
$10.25 billion of profit after tax. I think it was a record profit. I'm keeping one eye on the markets now. And you would have seen a sports fanatic, a professional sport type performer, etc. Seen a lot of sporting events in your time. I'm curious to know what your all-time favourite sporting moment is that doesn't include grand final wins. Or maybe even doesn't include you.
Yeah, okay, all right. One that doesn't include me. So I moved up to Sydney in October of 2005. And I didn't know anyone. And I was putting applications in for uni at Sydney Uni and the University of New South Wales. And I got chatting with someone at Sydney Uni, and he said, oh, Ted, I've got a spare ticket to the Socceroos qualifier tonight.
I've been waiting for this moment. That's my mind.
Any interest in going along? I said, oh, yeah, I'm happy to go with you. And he said, oh, that's the only thing. It's one seat by itself. I don't know anyone there. Like, he goes, it's just one seat. And I was like, I don't know anyone in Sydney. I moved here 2 weeks ago. Probably even a week ago. I said, I'll go along. So I went to the famous qualifier where the Socceroos won and John Ellis, he kicked that final penalty at
in the shootout.
In the shootout, which surely listeners are aware, unless if they're not aware of that because they're too young. And I sat there by myself, well, not by myself, with 100,000 others, not know anyone, but there. I can remember when that goal went through, I was just hugging strangers. And I think that's the only time in my life I was openly just hugging random people. I'd say that's my favourite.
Oh, that's so good to hear. The first time, like I sometimes I ask people and I rattle off John Aloisi and John Eales and Steve Waugh and all these great moments during my generation. I do remember that one very clearly. I was at a pub with a whole lot of mates and did hug strangers that night too here in Brisbane. And I did the same thing, but I wasn't at a pub. I was actually with all my neighbours. When the Matildas did the same thing almost during the World Cup, not to make the World Cup, but during the World Cup recently, which again was an all-time favourite sporting moment for me as well. Ted, I also asked my guests about their scoreboard moment, which is a moment in your life which is very vivid and very clear. And from that moment on, things changed.
All right, this is certainly not as well known as John Aloisi Socceroos moment. Certain times throughout my career, in fact, a lot of my career, I suffered from imposter syndrome. And the line I like about that is there's two types of people in the world: those that doubt themselves from time to time and liars. So, and the reason why I just want to share that first is, like everyone, I had my self-doubts from time to time. And we were going down to play Geelong one game at Cardinia Park down there, which is a bit of a fortress. And I don't know how I came across this, but around the time on social media or their website, one of their best players, a guy by the name of Harry Taylor, would put a piece of content on their website about something he thinks that the team needs to do so they can win the game this weekend. It was like a 5-minute little segment on their website. And it was all about, I'm proud to say, it was all about me and the role that I was playing in the Swans in being able to shut down a good forward, but also intercept marks and start attacking. And not that the reason why I'm sharing this is, I think you called this scoreboard moment, is it really made me, like, this feedback from this opponent couldn't have been clearer in terms of I'm a good player. It was the best possible way I could have heard from someone who I respected so much. I am a good player. So I just thought I'd share that story as a scoreboard moment, because when I heard that, I'd go back to that from time to time and go, no, I am a good player. Teams worry about me. I'm going to go out there and dominate on the weekend. And so apologies, it's not a Socceroos World Cup qualifier story, but it certainly was a line in the sand moment for my mindset.
No, it's deep. It's deeply personal, and I like that because it's very relevant to what I do. And I was chatting to someone in their mid-40s, a good friend of mine recently, about it, and he's a very good public speaker. And I said to him, mate, you're very good. He goes, oh, am I? And I said, well, yeah, you are. I enjoyed it, and it was like you're getting good feedback from people. And he said, yeah, it's actually kind of cool to speak in front of lots of people, and the dopamine hits quite strong. But I never really thought I was any good at it. I'm sort of just doing it as a bit of a job. And then he said to me more recently about flipping it. He's like, mate, I'm loving this now, and I think I'm pretty good at it. And I'm like, yeah, but this is a person who's in their mid-40s that's been speaking all their life, basically, only really discovering now that they're reasonably okay at it and enjoying it. So it's imposter syndrome, it's real. Like, we all, I think.
Chris,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I know, listeners, many may have read the fantastic book Open by Andre Agassi. It was one of my favourite books I've ever read. And the story that I just want to share relevant to this conversation is how Andre Agassi, is the number one tennis player in the world, often 3 to 4 hours before a game, the what ifs were consuming him, and he'd always have the view, I'm going to lose. So he had to go through this process an hour or two before the game, which often entailed, him looking at himself in the mirror and shaving his head, and him telling himself, this mantra over and over. And it would take time as the number one player in the world to shift this imposter syndrome into a place where he could confidently walk onto a Senate court and go, I'm going to beat my opponent today.
And feel like, oh yeah, I'm okay. I'm pretty good. Like, mate, you're the best in the world.
Yeah. It affects everyone.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, we have a sponsor here at Scoreboard. It's Swyftx. They're a Brisbane-based cryptocurrency platform, proudly homegrown. And then as part of their sponsorship, we do a little segment called the Bucket List, part of their new campaign, Where Can Crypto Take You? And the purpose is to ask you about your sporting bucket list event that you've never attended, Ted, you would love to attend. I'm curious to know what that is.
I'm pretty confident this will be the first time you've ever heard this response. As opposed to saying a World Cup or an Olympics, my favourite soccer team is Borussia Dortmund in the German Bundesliga.
Yes, this is the first time.
The part of the reason why I love that team is their fans. There is their stadium and their fans. So they have this stadium I think it's called Signal Park, and at one end of the stadium is it's called the Yellow Wall. And now, as much as I love the Sydney Swans fans, equally best fans in the world are the Borussia Dortmund fans, and particularly the most passionate are the fans that sit in the Yellow Wall. I would love to take my family to Dortmund, and so we can all experience being a part of the Yellow Wall in a Champions League game. I've shared that with my wife. She rolled her eyes. She said, there's no way I'm going. But certainly my sons will be joining me, and hopefully my daughter too.
Wow. Curious mind. Why Borussia Dortmund?
Yeah, it's as a sporting spectacle, like the fans are just how passionate they are. They were what got me into it. So we've got Oasis traveling the world right now, and I've bought tickets to that. Don't get me wrong. I'm so excited to see Oasis play. But part of what I'm excited about is to be at Marvel Stadium with 80,000 others in this huge rock and roll party is exciting me too. And the reason why I use that analogy is because it's not just about the game of football. It's about being a part of this fantastic atmosphere, and that's. I don't think there's a more passionate fan base that I've seen compared to the Borussia Dortmund fans of the Yellow Wall.
Mate, that is a first. You've nailed the first. There's always a first for everything, and you're the first for that. So where can crypto take you? Take you to Germany. But yes, of the most, not a betting man, but geez, that would have been $1 million to one shot to get that one.
I think
VP a few times. We've had the Masters a couple of times, the Super Bowl a few times, a couple of Olympics. But there you go. That's the first.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they've got the highest average attendance of any sporting team in the world. I think they beat Real Madrid. They certainly beat any English team.
Yep.
So that just to qualify, yes, you might not have heard them before, but yeah, it's 85,000 full stadium every week.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of some of those college football games in the USA.
Yeah. So that'd be on the bucket list too. But I don't know. There's something about the Champions League with a bit of the prestige of that, which exactly.
Yeah, not just any old league, but the best of the leagues, all in Europe. Ted, I've got one final question for you. You are a parent. You mentioned you've got 3 kids. I'm curious to know around your views in kids sport and your kids playing sport potentially in the future. And as a parent and parental behaviour around kids when they're playing sport, what's some advice that you can give?
Chris, I certainly don't think of myself as any model parent. I'm just a parent that's trying to do my best. But
we all are.
So my kids play quite a few different sports, one of which is soccer. And where my kids play soccer, parents have got to rotate. If under 10's got to rotate who the referee is. I can't get over when it's my turn to referee the shit that I hear from parents commenting, providing feedback. Now, don't get me wrong. I remember 15, 20 minutes ago, we were talking about the need to be resilient and take feedback on, but the lack of respect that is shown by what is often very smart parents with an inability just to show a level of respect to someone, to a volunteer, to a young kid, it is disgusting. So an ask of your listeners is not just to be polite if there is someone refereeing your sons, because more often than not, they're a 14 or a 15-year-old that's doing it for $10 or something like that. But to go out of your way to thank them, because it's very sad to see the amount of umpires that don't even last 1 year because of things that have been said to them. And it is sad, and part of it, I think it's a part of Australian culture we haven't got right yet, is how we treat umpires.
100%. And I've done some shows on that, and I'm definitely not a martyr and definitely not a perfect parent, but there's processes and systems and things that you can do. As an example, there was a game, one of my kids' games playing AFL, and then after the game, the kid was at the canteen with his mum, and I just said politely, I said, "Oh, excuse me, were you the umpire of that game over there?" And he looked like a very kind of like a ghost, going, "What's he going to say to me?"
Yeah.
And the mum turned quickly to me, and I just said, "Oh, you did very well out there. It was a great game of footy. Well done." And then he went, you'd never heard of that before, and I was like, "That's in its own right sad that maybe." And I did it in a softly voice and didn't want to be like you don't want to be the person that's hey, that guy bailing up the umpire. No, it's the opposite. It's thank you. Because if you say thank you and they get the money and they're happy, they're like, "I'll do this again. This was fun."
Yeah.
Because they're a kid, and it's, someone mentioned in a previous podcast, it's child abuse if you're yelling at a 14-year-old. Where else do you do that, right? So, or a 15-year-old. So it's got to stop. And I'm not here to preach, but it is a disgusting behaviour, as you mentioned. And the more we talk about it, I think the more, over time, things can change a little bit.
Totally agree, Chris.
Ted Richards, thank you so much for being on Scoreboard, the podcast today, and sharing your life journey from pre-footy, footy, post-footy to where you are now in the position of managing money and relationship building with high net worths and sophisticated investors. I really do appreciate your time. Wish you all the best in the coming reporting season and beyond in terms of long-term investing and the relationships you have with your clients and your kids' sport. Looking forward to following your progress.
Thanks for the conversation, Chris. Enjoyed it.